some of them approved by the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But what the Prophet actually recited and what has been widely transmitted from him and more authentically transmitted from him was the famous talbiyah as we know it, labbaik Allahumma labbaik, labbaik la sharika laka labbaik, inna al-hamda wa ni'mata laka wal mulk la sharika lak. And the sunnah is to recite that a minimum of 3 times. If I recite the talbiyah, at least 3 times I should recite it, and there's no maximum to it. As much as I possibly can should I be reciting the talbiyah. And after every set of talbiyah that I recite, I should conclude with salutations upon the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because he is the one that came to teach us the Hajj and informed us of the Hajj. And had it not been for him, we would not have known the Hajj. So while remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and while responding to the call of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we don't forget the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who was the medium via which Allah sent us the deen and sent us the Hajj. So the preferred formula of salawat is to perform the salawat Ibrahimiyya, the Abrahamic formula of salawat which we recite in our salah. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammad kama sallaita ala Sayyidina Ibrahim wa ala ali Sayyidina Ibrahim وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما باركت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل سيدنا إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. And thereafter it's recommended to pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala making dua, but the specific dua to recite is to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for His pleasure, His ridwan, to ask Him for Jannah and to seek His protection from the fire. And all of that has been compiled in a famous supplication. We say, Allahumma inna nas'aluka ridaka wal jannata wa na'udhu bika min sakhatika wal nar. Wa na'udhu bika min sakhatika wal nar. So whenever I recite the salawat, after the salawat I should include the dua. Allahumma inna nas'aluka ridaka wal jannah wa na'udhu bika min sakhatika wal nar. And thereafter you can make whatever dua you wish to make for yourself. It is recommended to recite as much talbiyah as you possibly can. Recite it until you doze off. Recite it until you fall asleep. You are now responding to Allah's call. It's recommended to recite the talbiyah while riding, while standing, while sitting, while lying down, while walking, while running. Whatever position you can find yourself in, now in the state of ihram, it's emphasized for you to engage in the recitation of the talbiyah. And alhamdulillah, the buses of Capetonians are generally buzzing with the talbiyah. There's always someone on the bus that takes the lead to lead the rest in the recitation of the talbiyah. And that should continue. For the more we recite it, the more desire is instilled within our hearts to arrive at the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Qibla of the Muslims. The first house that was ever built on the face of this earth. Some narration says that the angels built the Kaaba before Nabi Adam alayhi salatu wasalam. And there wasn't a single prophet nor messenger except that they came and visited the Kaaba and performed tawaf around the Kaaba. La ilaha illallah. And then it is further emphasized to recite the talbiyah whenever there's a change in your state. So whenever the bus stops, it's recommended to recite the talbiyah. Whenever the bus departs, starts moving again, it's recommended to recite the talbiyah. Whenever you reach a particular destination, recite the talbiyah. Whenever you depart from a particular destination, recite the talbiyah. Whenever there's an incline, you recite the talbiyah. Whenever there's a decline, you recite the talbiyah. Whenever there's a change, whatever the change may be, it becomes recommended for you to renew the recitation of the talbiyah. Ya Rabb, Allah allow us to be in such a state. We were wearing the ihram and on our way to visit the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Reciting the talbiyah with reason and meaning from our hearts that we're responding to the call of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he said that you continue reciting the talbiyah until you engage in your tawaf. Once you reach the haram and you're about to engage in your tawaf, then you would stop reciting the talbiyah and you will engage in adhkar and du'as whatever other supplications you intend making while performing the tawaf, and we'll discuss more of that when we actually reach the arkan of Umrah and the arkan of Hajj. No. As for a lady, it's recommended that she does not raise her voice, but she recites the talbiyah in such a manner that she's able to hear herself. And if she was to raise her voice, then it is considered to be makruh, not haram. Unlike the adhan, for a lady to call out the adhan in the presence of strange men is haram. But for her to recite, if she was to recite the talbiyah aloud in the presence of strange men, she will not be guilty of committing something which is haram, but something which is makruh. And I'm reading here from the Manasik of Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala. Ya Rabb. And also from the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is that whenever you see something that amazes you, something beautiful or something amazing of this world, then the sunnah is to recite Labbaik Allahumma Labbaik inna al-aisha aishul akhirah. We are present, O Allah, indeed the true life is the life of the next world. And then he said that it's permissible for you to recite the talbiyah in English if you're unable to recite it in Arabic. But all Cape Townians know Arabic. Our next discussion is the ihram. Now the ihram requires, remember it's fiqh. And fiqh have a tendency to be, they say that the study of fiqh is fi jafwa, it's dry, and sometimes technical, sometimes require us to use our minds a bit. But at the end of the day, it's the law of Allah. And no matter how intricate a discussion may appear or seem to be, it's Allah's law. And therefore, when I study any aspect of fiqh, I'm studying Allah because it emanates from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, the forbidden acts while in ihram. I'm going to be reading now from the Manasik al-Hajj publication of ours, and the notes on the ihram, if anyone wants a copy of it, I'll give you a number that you could WhatsApp, and that WhatsApp number will reply to you with the requesting the notes on the ahkam related to the ihram, and that WhatsApp number will reply with the notes, inshallah ta'ala. I was unable to print any of this out. Inshallah, after Ramadan, we hope to have better structure, whereby our publication will be reprinted and copies will be made available, so you are able to follow with a text in front of you, rather than just being expected to remember a whole lot of detail. So the unlawful acts of ihram may be categorized into three categories. The first category, acts that necessitate a fidya under all circumstances. And then there are acts that do not necessitate fidya at all. And then there are acts that necessitate a fidya when perpetrated knowingly and intentionally. So those are the three categories. What do we mean by fidya? There's two terms that's often used. You would hear the term fidya, and you would hear the term dam. Hij moet een dam betalen. And sometimes you hear them saying hij moet een fidya betalen. So, even though sometimes this may be used interchangeably, but generally, 99% of the time, the word fidya refers to a penalty that you should pay that equals 1 mud of the staple food within a particular city, which is generally going to be wheat or barley or the like. Right? So a mud, the value of 1 mud is approximately 2.97 kilograms. So it should be 2.97 kilograms of rice, or 2.97 kilograms of wheat or flour, but it's supposed to be wheat in its original form. Generally, in Cape Town, we just use, when we speak about a mud, like in the, you'll find the fidya that people have to pay in the month of Ramadan. The MJC released those figures not too long ago. Does anyone remember what it is? Not 40 rand. 40 rand is the fitra. 10 rand. No. 10 rand. So that's the fidya. So a fidya is a mud of food that needs to be paid to the poor. Whereas a dam is the sacrifice of an animal. And depending on the crime, it could be the sacrifice of a camel, or a cow, or a lamb. In most instances, when we speak of a dam, you have to sacrifice a lamb, or a goat, a ma'iz or a da'an, the Arabic words. Tamam. So acts that necessitate a fidya under all circumstances, there are 3. And we'll discuss each of them in some detail, inshallah ta'ala. So the first is cutting the hair, the second is cutting the nails, and the third is hunting. These are acts, whenever you perpetrate them intentionally or not, you have to pay a fidya. Unless it was, because the first is cutting hair, unless it happens naturally, not on account or not consequent to any action of yours. When we come to the discussion of hair, quickly, 1 second. So he said, it is haram to cut, pluck, burn, or remove the hair in any way without a valid reason, while in a state of ihram. This applies to hair on the head, the nose, the beard, underarms, or pubic hair, and to any part of the nails. In all of these cases, fidya will have to be paid. So one has to be very careful. If I scratch my hair gently, my head is itching, and I scratch my hair gently, being very careful not to let any hair come out, and then out of my power, despite my gentleness, a hair comes out, I won't be held liable for that. But if I was vigorous in scratching my head, not taking care to be subtle, then I would be guilty of, and a hair was to come loose, a hair or two comes loose, then I will be guilty and I'll have to pay a fidya, which is 1 mud, which is going to be similar approximately around 10 rands, if not more. It has to be done in Saudi Arabia. So one needs to determine what 1 mud of rice or wheat or barley will cost over there. Everyone's with me. It is, however, acceptable to cut or shave the hair for a valid reason. What would a valid reason be? One of the companions suffered from lice, and it was troubling him. And then Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam permitted him to shave his head, and thereafter instructed him to pay a fidya. Now, it is haram to comb the hair, when in doing so there is a fear of hair falling out. If no such fear exists, then combing the hair would be regarded as makruh. If the hair breaks or falls out due to combing, then it is necessary to pay a fidya. Now, everyone follows. So the hair is generally very challenging when it comes to the ihram. And one needs to try to be as particular and cautious as he possibly can. As this was the instruction of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Last week I mentioned that some of the Sahaba, because of fear of being guilty of having hair fall out, they used to shave their heads before entering in ihram. They used to shave their heads before entering in ihram. So he writes here that while in ihram, one should not use soap, nor rub the hair vigorously, nor pass the hands through the beard. And it is best not to scratch so that no hair falls out. People have a tendency to play with their beard a lot. Right? I mean, I don't know if I should say this now or not. If I say it and anyone takes offense, then please forgive me. I met the old man in our bookshop. We ran the Timbuktu bookshop. He was a very elderly gentleman. We met him there. They were speaking to me about a number of things and different projects that we are running. And I was telling the uncle, look, we need the du'as of our seniors. So I said, all the uncles here with grey hair in their beards or on their heads, we are in need of your du'as. And that's a reality. Young individuals such as myself, we are very, very much in need of the du'as of our seniors. You have no idea how important your du'as are for the young, in inverted commas, because I don't consider myself a scholar, but the young scholars and imams in our societies, there are so much, the youth in general, are so much in need of the du'as of the seniors. My friend, they were at madrasa, when a student came in and he was absent the previous day. So the teacher asked him, where were you? So he said, sorry, Sheikh, my grandmother passed away yesterday. My grandmother passed away yesterday. So the Sheikh responded saying to him, you should make more dua for yourself. You need to start making more dua for yourself. And the students were perplexed because his grandmother passed away, he must make more dua. What is the two got to do with each other? So the dars ended, so the students asked him, Sheikh, please, before you leave, we don't understand, his grandmother passed away. You did not console him, but you told him he needs to make more dua for himself. So the Sheikh said to the young man that, do you think you're studying the Quran and studying the Arabic language and studying fiqh and you're present here in the madrasa out of your own? You're only here because of the du'as of the likes of your grandmother. Now that she's passed on, you need to start making more dua for yourself. So du'as of the seniors are very important. So anyway, this was a senior. So I said, make dua. The uncles with the grey beards. So he said, I need to tell you a story about the beard. You see, people, they play with their beards in different ways. But whatever way they play with the beard, there's meaning in it. I'm still doubting whether I should be like this. Anyway. So he said that when you see a man playing like this with his beard, when he does this, he's telling the lady over there, you can come to me now. And when he does this, when he does this, he's telling the lady, when he does this, then he's telling her, meet me around the corner. And he had other symbols. But playing with the beard is unnecessary. And if you're playing unnecessarily with your beard, whether there's messages or not, and hair falls out, you're going to be guilty because you're doing something which is unnecessary. It's not like an itch, as I explained previously. No. And it is best not to scratch so that no hair falls out. However, if hair does fall out and there is a doubt as to whether it fell out by itself or as a result of combing, then fidya will not be due. So whenever there's doubt whether the hair could have came out by itself or whether you are responsible for your hair, the fact that there's doubt means that there's no fidya. You'll find this happening a lot. You'd blow your nose and you'd see hair, because now what happened with many people in ihram, they become over-focused on, I should not be responsible for hair coming loose. So he washes his hair or he wipes his head, whatever his case, and he finds hair. In all those instances, the reality is that you have doubt. You cannot ascertain for sure whether you are responsible for that hair coming out or whether it came out by itself. And in such instances, al-aslu al-adam. And al-aslu al-adam. The default is that you are not the cause. And since you are not the cause, the default is that you're not the cause, you don't have to pay a fidya. If in the process of removing a piece of skin, some hair or nail is removed, then fidya will not be due. It is permissible for a person in the state of ihram to cut the hair of one outside of ihram, not vice versa. No. Meaning someone outside, someone that's not in ihram, cannot trim or cut the hair of somebody that is in ihram. One of the practices, for some reasons the other in Cape Town, that is incorrect, is that we believe that someone out of the state of ihram has to cut my hair when I want to come out of a state of ihram. So if I want to come out of ihram, my hair must be trimmed, because the minimum hair to be cut when coming out of ihram, when I've done my tawaf, and I've done my sa'i, and now I'm ready to come out of my ihram, at least 3 hairs should be trimmed. So I look for someone that's not in ihram, thinking that someone that's in ihram can. So you find 3 brothers, they perform umrah together, none of them will cut the hair of each other. They look for someone that's present and ask them, are you out of ihram already? That person will say yes, and they ask him to bring them out of ihram, but that's incorrect. A person in ihram can cut the hair of someone else, can even cut his own hair to take him or herself out of the state of ihram. If a person in ihram is ignorant of these rulings or forgets them, then dispensation of a fidya will be necessary. So that's the discussion related to cutting hair and nails, in short. So we said that any of these acts, cutting hair, cutting nails, hunting we're not going to spend much time on because nobody hunts. But while nobody hunts, you're not allowed to kill anything while in a state of ihram, and if you were to do so, a penalty would have to be paid. No. So any of these actions requires a fidya under all circumstances. Something that is not permitted in ihram, though if you want to do it there will be no fidya, is marriage. You cannot get married while in a state of ihram, irrespective of whether you're the bride or the groom. And if you were to do so, the marriage will not be valid. But you won't have to pay a fidya as such. He said here that it is haram to marry or give someone's hand in marriage while in the state of ihram. It is not permissible to act as a wali, guardian, bride or groom while in the state of ihram. The marriage enacted while in the state of ihram is null and void. However, in a state of ihram, you could serve as a witness. So if the wali is in ihram, you can't even appoint the imam back home to perform the nikah on his behalf. A muhrim, however, a person in the state of ihram could serve as a witness at the nikah ceremony. Then beyond that, even to propose to a lady while in the state of ihram is not permitted. I know these discussions may seem somewhat far-fetched for us these days, because who thinks of proposing to someone while in ihram, or who thinks of getting married while in the state of ihram? That is because our journey in ihram is short. But in the past, the journey of ihram is to be long. People could be up to 10 days, 2 weeks in ihram, traveling, spending time, stopping over, camping. So their journey to Makkah was long from the time that they put on their ihram, and therefore, the longer the journey, the more things that could potentially and possibly happen. No. And therefore, Rasulullah spoke of these things, even though it sounds very hypothetical from where we are standing. No. Acts that necessitate a fidya if perpetrated knowing and intentionally. So here we have 5 in total. Applying perfume to your body or clothing while in ihram intentionally requires you to pay a fidya. Wearing sewn clothing, and we explain sewn clothing to mean clothing that wraps itself around any particular body part, requires you to pay a fidya. Something we did not discuss but comes up under this discussion is the wearing of shoes. This is actually almost a heated discussion among pilgrims. What shoes can you wear and what shoes can you not wear? And the answer is that you cannot wear shoes. You need to wear sandals. But when wearing sandals, what sandals should you be wearing and what sandals can you not wear? So the agreed upon sandal by all scholars that is permitted it's agreed upon that a shoe that covers the entire foot, including the ankle, as impermissible. If you wear such a shoe, you will have to pay a fidya. Right? That's agreed upon. Then you have the sandals. So that's one area. Another area that's agreed upon, if you're wearing a sandal where your ankle is exposed, and your ankle of course is the 2 bones that protrude on either side of the foot. If you're wearing a sandal where your ankles are exposed and your toes are exposed, that is an agreed upon sandal that is valid according to all scholars. So that's a safe zone to be in. You want to be wearing a sandal where your toes are not covered and your ankle is not covered. You could have 1 or 2 straps over the upper part of your foot. You can have a strap coming around by your heel, that's all fine. But if your ankles are exposed, open, and your toes are exposed and open, then that's a valid sandal by all scholars. The grey area is when you're wearing a sandal where the ankles are covered and the toes are exposed, or the toes are covered but the ankle is exposed. And these scholars differ. The majority saying that you cannot wear. The more common example here would be you're wearing a sandal where you tie your foot, where your toe area is covered, but your ankles are open. I don't know of a sandal where your ankles are open and your toes are open. Sorry, your ankles are covered and your toes are open. I don't know of such a sandal, so I'm just going to use the example that is real. Where you have a sandal that covers your whole foot, like a slip-in type of slipper, where your foot is covered, but your ankles are exposed. That is permitted by a minority of scholars, while the majority of scholars consider it to be not permitted. And it's very easy to come around. It's not wise in any case to be wearing a closed slipper type of sandal while in Saudi Arabia, because the weather is very hot. And you often need to take wudu and your sandals need to get wet. So it doesn't make sense to be wearing such a slipper in any case. That on the one hand. On the other hand, if you want to do so, then according to the official view in the Shafi'i school, and all madhahib for that matter, you will have to pay a fidya. So the simplest solution is find yourself a sandal, which is most sandals by the way, either a beach sandal that has one toe separated, or a sandal that has a strap around the heel and a strap over the foot, but your ankles are exposed and your toes are exposed. Like Green Cross will have a large variety of sandals that is valid for ihram. My advice though is don't wear a new sandal. The worst thing you can do is to go for Hajj with a new sandal. Wear something that, if you do want to wear a new sandal, then purchase the sandal now and wear it for 2-3 months so that your foot become accustomed to the sandal. I performed Hajj 1 year with a new sandal and it gave me so many blisters, you won't believe me. Because it's new and your foot still needs to grow into the sandal. And I know this has nothing to do with the ahkam of Hajj, but it's a valuable piece of advice. I promise you that, because blisters you develop very quickly if you constantly have wet feet in sandals and you're doing a lot of walking. So don't wear new sandals. You thank you for that at the later stage. So applying perfume intentionally requires wearing some clothing, including the type of sandal that I spoke of, intentionally and knowingly, requires a fidya. Covering the head or face. Of course, the head for a male and the face for a female requires fidya. Now, is there a discussion on covering the head or face? I don't see it. But for a man to cover his head with a scarf or with a shawl or with a kufiya would be impermissible and requires him to pay a fidya. If, however, he holds, they say if you're riding in a vehicle where your head reaches the ceiling of the car, they actually speak about a hodaj. Classical fiqh, they speak about a mahmal or a hodaj, which was a structure that would go on an animal. And if you're sitting in a structure and it reaches on your head, can you sit in a bus or a car where your head is reaching the ceiling? In other words, will that be considered covering the head or not? They say, the official view says no, even though some of the scholars say it does constitute covering the head. Also, if you want to lay down, so you can't cover your head with your turban, but if you take your turban and use it as a pillow and then lay down on the pillow, whereby part of your head is as if it's covered, that's also permitted, because now you're not actually covering your head, you're just using the turban as a pillow. So intentionally covering the head requires you to pay fidya. Similarly, a lady that covers her face with niqab while in the state of ihram has to pay the fidya. But what is permitted, and Imam Nawawi mentioned this in his Manasik al-Hajj, that a lady, what she could do to avoid fitna, if she fears fitna, she could wear a face veil that does not hang directly on her face. And you may have seen that some women these days, they wear those sun caps. And the sun cap has a, what you call it? A peak, right? And if the face veil hangs over that peak, it means that the veil is not touching your face, but hanging in front of your face, and that would be permitted. Even though I've heard some of our scholars saying that it's best that she does not do so. And other scholars argue, no, that if she's someone that is accustomed to covering her face, then it's better for her to do so. Either way, it will be permitted for her, and she has a choice to do whatever she feels comfortable, whether she wants to do it that way, by covering her face even though it's not touching the skin, or whether she wants to leave it out altogether. The last thing that necessitates not a fidya but a dam is indulging in sexual intercourse. Indulging in sexual intercourse. Again, you and I may think that it's a bus drive from Bir Ali to Makkah, which is 5 or 6 hours, and then I'm going to perform a Umrah, and how could I be thinking about sexual relations? Yes, because we're living in a time where you can be out of your haram within 24 hours. But if you are traveling with your wife along the road and stopping over and camping, and your journey is 10 days to 2 weeks, then that's a different story altogether. And nonetheless, the reality is, even with the short periods of ihram that we have, there are people that fall into, there are husbands and wives that falls into sexual relations while in the state of ihram. So it's haram to have sexual intercourse while in the state of ihram. It is haram for a person to embrace his wife without partitioning, to kiss or touch her with desire while in the state of ihram. Touching that is void of desire is not haram. So not only sexual relations, but any type of foreplay or fondling or anything of that kind with desire is considered to be haram. Should a person engage in sexual relations after the first tahallul, before the second one, you will have to give a dam. Slaughter a goat or sheep. Is it a goat or sheep or a camel? Oh, this is after the first tahallul, I see. So there's two things you mentioned here, tahallul. I don't know. Tahallul means untying ihram, coming out of a state of ihram. But now he's speaking about, in Cape Town we don't say first tahallul and second tahallul. We call it the klein verlossing and the groot verlossing. So the Buddhas will say the klein verlossing. What is the klein verlossing in Hajj? What do we mean when we say klein verlossing? And what do we mean when we say groot verlossing? Of course, this is a lesson for after Ramadan, but since we're touching on the concept now. So you come out of your haram by doing 4 actions. But this is not Umrah, this is Hajj. So to come out of your haram in al-Hajj, you have to peel Jamarat al-Aqaba. Remember, you left Muzdalifah, you picked up your stones, you're coming to Mina, you don't peel all 3 Jamarat, you only peel Jamarat al-Aqaba, the main Jamarat. Right? That's the first thing. The other actions you need to do is you need to shave your head, you need to perform Tawaf al-Ifada, and lastly you need to perform the Sa'i after Tawaf al-Ifada. That's 4 things. Tamam? If you do one of the 4, then that's considered to be the klein verlossing, or your first tahallul. When you've done one of the 4 and you've untied yourself, your first untying, or you've covered the klein verlossing, then everything that was haram while in the state of haram becomes permissible for you except sexual intercourse. It's very interesting, and many people don't actually use this. Technically, once you've felt the Jamarat al-Aqaba, you've started your process of coming out of your haram. So now already you can slip into normal clothing. You don't have to be wearing 2 sheets. Already you can apply perfume. You can, whatever was now previously, as what we discussed, what was haram for you, now becomes permissible for you. After you felt the Jamarat al-Aqaba. But of course we'll discuss that in more detail at a later stage. So that's the klein verlossing. So if a person has sexual intercourse when? After the klein verlossing. But before the groot verlossing, the second untying, which is the completion of all 4 things. If you was to have sexual intercourse then, you will have to pay a dam, but the dam will be slaughtering of a sheep or a goat, which costs you, how much riyals? I don't know, your agent will tell you what's the cost of a dam, because everyone that's making a tamattu hajj has to pay a dam in any case, so you get to know what the price is. And if you go into the the Zamzam towers, that's where you actually, people pay for the dam in case. It's the cheapest place to pay for the dam. Inside the Zamzam tower is right at the back. But how does this happen? This could possibly happen because you've pelted Jamrat al-Aqaba. Many people after pelting Jamrat al-Aqaba, they may be too tired to go and perform Tawaf al-Ifadah. People are very tired. The young men, mashallah, for them to go and perform Tawaf al-Ifadah is very easy to make your way back to the Haram. But if you're really exhausted, you have an option of going back home, taking a shower, cutting your hair, and wearing normal clothing and delaying your Tawaf al-Ifadah until a later stage. That's permitted. Is everybody following me? So since you went home after your pelting Jamrat al-Aqaba and you shaved your head and took a shower, you are now out of, you've performed the painful Muslim, you can live a normal life, you can apply perfume to yourself, those restrictions are no longer there to you. And somebody in that state may imagine, and plus it's Eid the next morning, someone may think that since I'm doing everything, I might also have conjugal relations with my family. But if he was to do that, he will have to pay a dam, which is a slaughtering of a goat or a sheep. So if that refers to what now? I'm going to read it again so everybody can be with me, but I lost my place. Should a person engage in sexual relations after the first tahallul, after pelting Jamrat al-Aqaba, before the second one, before completing all 4 acts? Jamrat al-Aqaba, shaving the head, Tawaf al-Ifadah and Sa'i. Before completing his Sa'i. Then he'll have to pay a dam, which is slaughter goat or sheep, as his Hajj will be correct even if he's performing his supererogatory Hajj. The impermissibility of sexual relations, etc. remains till the second tahallul, disengagement from ihram. Touching a woman with desire without a partition, that is, directly skin on skin, results in a fidya upon the male, but does not render the Hajj null and void. A fidya need not be given if a person fondles his wife, forgetting that he is in a state of ihram, even if he ejaculates. Masturbation is haram and necessitates a fidya. If a person has sexual relations with his wife before the first tahallul, this is the actual discussion, the main point that we need to make. If a person has sexual relations before the first tahallul, meaning before he pelted Jamrat al-Aqaba, then his Hajj is rendered null and void. Your Hajj becomes invalid once you have sexual relations before your first tahallul. Despite the invalidity of his Hajj, you will have to complete it. Both parties will have to perform Hajj the following year, both husband and wife. Similarly, if the Umrah is spoiled prior to its completion, the Umrah will have to be completed and repeated once again. The kafara, or the expiation of sexual relations, which is binding upon the male and not the responsibility of the female, is a single camel, or in the absence of a camel, 1 cow. So the expiation for having sexual relations while in ihram, prior to your training for Rasul, is your Hajj becomes null and void, and you have to still pay a dam of 1 camel. And a camel could cost anything from 10,000 rand up. Therefore, even though I didn't mention this last week, but I read it here, they say that when you're preparing yourself to enter in ihram, before taking a shower and trimming your nails and so forth and so on, they say it's recommended for a man to have conjugal relations with his wife, so that when he enters in ihram, his desire is somewhat subsided or alleviated. Now, what's our time like now? 5 minutes over. No, 5 minutes. So that covers the ahkam related to the ihram. And I said, if everyone wants copies of these notes, we will send you copies of the notes, inshallah ta'ala, so that you can read whatever we have covered this evening in terms of things that are prohibited for a person while in a state of ihram. And I also gave my word, I promise, and I pray to Allah that I'm able to fulfill this, that when we meet after Ramadan, inshallah ta'ala, copies of the book will be available, so that when you attend class, you are able to follow with the text in front of you, inshallah ta'ala. I know the adhan is to go any second, but because this is our last class before Ramadan, I'd like just to, even just for 5 minutes, if anyone has a pertinent question, to raise the question and we could discuss it. Also reminding you that after Ramadan we will have lengthier sections for questions and answers, inshallah. Yes, sir. Sure. No. So his question is, takhallul, which is a sunnah for a person that has a thick, dense beard. The sunnah is to stroke your fingers through your beard when performing I'll have to double check, but what I recall is that takhallul may not be a sunnah for you while you're in a state of ihram. But do remind me about the question so that I could double check and give you the correct answer at the later stage. No. No. So again, the ruling as mentioned is asking about couples being close to each other on Arafah. While in a state of ihram, if there is contact between couples with desire, that's considered to be haram and requires you to pay a fee. So if you are able to hold your wife's hand or give your wife a kiss while in a state of ihram without desire, then it would be permitted and there would be no problem. But if it's done so with desire, that is haram, and you will have to pay a fidya. We just covered that now. But it's a good reminder for couples that will be together on Mina and Arafah and so forth. If there's no other questions, we could conclude. Sheikh Arshad, do you have anything to say? Anyone else? I see I have my Hajj partner with me, Sidi Ahmed from Palestine. Khair, may Allah bless us in Sha'ban and allow us to reach Ramadan. One of the advices at our gathering the other evening, I mentioned to some of the Hujjaj that were performing Hajj this year, and if any of our brothers are performing Hajj this year, one of the most important things for Hajj is preparation. Preparation. We know we hear these lectures every year in and year out, that I need to prepare for Ramadan. And when I prepare for Ramadan, my Ramadan is great. And when I don't prepare for Ramadan, I don't have such a great Ramadan. And Ramadan is something that is valuable and precious, but Allah gives it to us every year. The current status in terms of accreditation and sawq and so forth, it's very rare that someone will have a second opportunity to perform Hajj. And therefore preparation for Hajj is even more important. And what I'd love to share with my brothers and sisters that will be performing Hajj this year, Ramadan is a magnificent month that has so much virtue. But you should try and use this month of Ramadan as a preparation for your Hajj. Because your Hajj is going to be once in a lifetime. You must prepare. Because people during the days of Hajj catch on the weirdest of things. People play cards when they're supposed to be sitting on Mina. They're playing dominoes in the hotel when they're supposed to be calling out to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and pelting the jamrah. On the days of Hajj, people are engaging in the most strangest of activities because there's no preparation. And therefore tell yourself, now already I'm preparing for my journey. And the second thing we mentioned was, and we mentioned this last week as well, continue praying that Allah accept you. Because acceptance is in Allah's hands. It doesn't matter, even if you are not accredited, if Allah accepted me for Hajj, then it doesn't matter whether my passport is ready, whether my visa is ready. If Allah accepted me, khalas. But I can have everything ready. If Allah has not accepted me, I'm not going. So use the month of Ramadan, those who have been accredited and are preparing for this journey, to continue knocking at Allah's doors. Oh Allah, accept me to perform Hajj this year. Oh Allah, accept me to perform Hajj this year. May Allah accept us all. And allow us very soon to be in front of His house, the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Qibla of the Muslims. Ameen ya Rabbal Alameen, with these intentions. Now, Bismillah.
You asked if I got a question, okay, here is one. You told here, when I took, what transformational changes ought to be and should be going through the Muslim and the Muslimah.
Do you want to answer it, Shaykh?
No.
No. So we spoke about the Tarbiyah. Wallahu Alam. From my perspective, I feel that you now, once you commence the Tarbiyah, you are now responding to the call of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that has come to us from our father Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. And your mindset should be such now that you are commencing on a journey towards Allah and towards His house, responding to His call, responding to this obligation, this obligatory pilgrimage that He has made upon us. So you become focused and direct yourself in entirety towards your Creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, focusing on Him, on pleasing Him and drawing close to Him. These are some of my thoughts, but if you'd like to add something, Shaykh.
That's something for everyone to reflect on. If you listen to the Arabic, labbaik, Allahumma labbaik, la sharika laka labbaik, illa al-hamda wa ni'mata laka wal mulk, la sharika laka. Look at the impact of the words chosen. You are present, not just for the Hajj. This is a lifetime invitation that is now being accepted, and the transformation that should set in prior to uttering these words. Starting here within these classes, refocusing yourself, reorientating yourself, bringing an end to what we would call wake up in the morning, work, go to bed in the evening, the cyclical life that we carry on. Seemingly endless, seemingly aimless. And here along comes Hajj. Allah wishes to redirect our attention and our focus to the most important aspect in our lives. And that is our commitment and our movement and our daily transformation in closer proximity to Allah, and how that impacts in our daily lives, not a once in a lifetime occasion.
I think the points raised are very important because Shaykh Aminullah Abdul Rauf was at our institute the other day. We're going to conclude in a second. And he gave a lecture that I found to be very important, and Shaykh Arshad touched on the essence of that lecture. And that is orientation and alignment. Because our religion is a path. Ihdina sirata mustaqim. So orientation is understanding where we come from and what our purpose is. And then our vision is ru'yatullah, to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Jannah. Our vision is to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Jannah. Therefore Imam Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, after he discussed and entire his Riyadh al-Salihin, a few thousand hadith, the very last hadith at the end of it all, after he speaks about charity and sadaqah and salah and hajj, and the very last hadith in his book, he says, when the people of Jannah enters Jannah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls him to a plane, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala removes the veil, and the people of Jannah sees Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's the vision, seeing Allah. In the Ihya Ulumuddin, the last narration in the Ihya Ulumuddin is also Ru'yatullah, seeing Allah. And the essence of Arshad captured is the idea of the Hajj being a alignment. Because the path is straight to that vision. But many a times we get drawn here and there, and the Hajj is a realignment for you and I to understand where I'm coming from and where I'm going and what my vision and objective is. So that's a beautiful, those are beautiful meanings that one may introduce to his pronouncement and utterance of Labbaik Allahumma Labbaik, Labbaik la sharika laka Labbaik, inna al-hamda wa ni'mata laka wal mulk la sharika laka. And like the Hajj holds those meanings, my salah should also be seen as a realignment. And we come into the masjid should also be seen as a realignment. These are all things that constantly reminds me I need to come back on that path that leads to Allah, that leads to seeing Him in Jannah. Jazakumullah khair. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept and increase with these intentions. Ila hadratin Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Al-Fatiha. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. So the Hajj class will continue after Ramadan, inshallah ta'ala. And for some of our brothers and sisters that have the time during the month of Ramadan, as we did last year, every day after Asr, we have a Rawha, which is a class that focuses specifically on matters related to our spiritual growth, matters of the heart. So every day after Asr, we have a class at the masjid for the duration of around, I think, 40 or 45 minutes usually. Those who are early home from work are encouraged to join us, and those who are not could follow. Speak to our brother Yusuf Isaac here. They usually stream it either over Mixer or YouTube. I don't know what they intend doing this year. But the classes during the month of Ramadan are extremely beneficial and hold great benefit. So may Allah accept us all to reach Ramadan. May Allah make this the best of Ramadan for all of us. Oh Allah, grant us openings in this month of Ramadan. Oh Allah, allow us to change our lives in this Ramadan. Oh Allah, allow us to realign ourselves to that objective and mission and vision in pleasing you and reaching you and seeing you in Jannah. Oh Allah, allow us to be punctual in attending the Taraweeh and reciting the Quran, in attending classes of knowledge and reciting Adhkar. Oh Allah, allow us to detach ourselves from all things of this dunya and to realign and attach ourselves to you in the month of Ramadan that lies ahead. Ameen Ya Rabbal Alameen. And we look forward to seeing everyone again after Ramadan. Or during Ramadan, we also have a very beautiful i'tikaf program that takes place here at the masjid. And more details will be shared at a later stage, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. Where's the Mahdi?